Al, did packets go out to all the committee members?
Yeah, all the information went out. It wasn't your traditional package. But yes, everyone has all of the grant information and all of the um, brief summaries on everything that's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. And we will just wait a minute or two for a couple others. I know a lot of people may have been listening for the verdict today, so I'll give them a couple more minutes to arrive.
You're muted, sir.
I thought I was unmuted. Guess not.
Hello.
Hello there, Alderman Gate, Alderroth. Hello, everyone.
Hello. How y'all doing tonight?
Hello, I guess we're all here. Well, a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Abby, I see that. All right, then we will get started. Since we do have a quorum, meeting will come to order, and I will read the Board of Alders public notice. Public Safety Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders will hold a public hearing on the following matters on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. via video conference. Please click the following URL to join online: https://bit.ly/3AEZXKE, or for audio only, dial 301-715-8592 and enter webinar ID 937-4463-3772 with the audio only password of 284-214-519. There are 3 items on our agenda tonight. Item number 1 is LM 2021-0083. It's a resolution of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven authorizing the Department of Police Service to accept a donation of up to $35,000 from Demand Zero to purchase resources for the Investigative Services Unit, including informant money, external hard drives for file storage, and evidence security bags, and to purchase food and veterinary services for patrol or narcotics canines. Item number 2, LM 2021-0085, a resolution of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven authorizing the mayor of the City of New Haven to submit an application to Federal Emergency Management Agency, Fire Prevention and Safety for $95,238.10, with a 10% match of $4,761.90 to replace a 22-year-old fire education trailer with a new one, and to accept such funds if offered, and to execute all documents and contracts as necessary. And item number 3 is LM 2021-0105, order of New Haven Board of Alders concerning the communication from the president of Local 884 requesting the Public Safety Committee of the Board of Alders hold a hearing on the working conditions of school security officers and the staff in the public safety access point. That's our emergency communications, or some call it PSAP, or 911 department. For accessibility related requests, please contact 203-946-7833 for voice or 203-946-8582 TTY prior to the meeting. If you wish to present testimony at the meeting, you must register in advance at https://bit.ly/3AEZXKE or by calling 203-946-7934 before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. The public comment or testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. To view the meeting, you may go to the Board of Alders YouTube page or https://bit.ly/3AEZXKE. Thank you. It's enough to get me confused. A lot of numbers and letters. I'm Gerald Antunes, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Alder of Ward 12. And starting with my Vice Chair, I'd like my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Ryan Wingate, Ward 29, Vice Chair of Public Safety, Ward 29.
Hey, Ralph, Ward 7.
Alder Haywood is not here. Alder Singh.
Alder Singh, Ward 5.
And Alder Smith.
Ward 30.
Thank you. I'll mention a couple of alders that are here with us tonight. Thank you for coming. Alder Ortiz from Ward 17, Alder DeCola from Ward 18, and Alder Ferraro Santana from Ward 13. Those are the only ones I see. I'll ask my Vice Chair during the meeting if you could help me to keep an eye on other alders that may show or people who raise their hands, because we can only see so many on the screen. So it would help me. Thank you.
Will do.
All right, Mr. Lucas, is the president from 884 here and ready to come in and test? Or we're not going to start with her. We're going to start with the police department, right? Yes, demand zero.
Okay, give me 1 second while I bring them in.
Okay, in the meantime, we'll also announce that Alder Crespo has arrived and has Alder Carmen Rodriguez.
Okay.
All right, are you ready, Alder Crespo? That's a yes. All right, police department. I see Assistant Chief Jacobson and Miss Karigian on board. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Chair and Alders. My name's Carl Jacobson. You want me to say my address, obviously? It's
Yes, name and
31
address
Yep.
for the record.
Carl Jacobson, Assistant Chief of Police, 31 Brook Lane, North Branford, Connecticut. We're here tonight to propose a donation from Demand Zero. If you're familiar with the organization, they're very good with the community and working on drug addiction and helping us to prevent people passing away from drug addiction, and have donated many resources to the police department for that cause. Tonight, we're asking that we be able to accept another $35,000 from Demand Zero. What that will be used for is specifically heroin and fentanyl cases wherever possible. And in the obviously investigations where heroin and fentanyl will be collected and hopefully taken off the streets and seized and taken off the streets. And we'll do that with money for controlled purchases and informants, but as well as money for resources related to those things, such as packaging and listening devices and other things. Our goal isn't to arrest everybody, but it's to get the sources of supply for heroin and fentanyl and take this deadly drug off the street. And I believe some of the monies as well will be to sustain 2 of the canines that were provided to us from Lisa Dean and her Demand Zero organization. I just see she just came on, and I just wanted to, whether the money's accepted or not, just thank her again, as always, for being a staunch supporter of trying to help us prohibit people from dying from drug overdoses. And we thank you, Lisa Dean. I think I've covered it unless Ms. Korigian has some more things that we'll be using this money for. We respectfully request this, and we feel it'll help us as we continue as the COVID crisis goes on. We have seen a staunch increase in overdose deaths. So we're getting some overdose deaths. We're trying to put packaging together, relating the packages to the deaths, as well as tracing phones. And we have a Cellbrite where we're going through the phones and trying to get the source of supply for these deadly drugs. That's it, sir.
That's great. Ms. Karijian, do you have anything to add?
I think he covered it.
It sounded good to me
He
too.
did, yep. I was waiting for him to mention the resources for the dogs, but he remembered that too, so good job.
That's why he gets the big bucks.
That's right.
Ms. Dean, I would like to hear a little bit, maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about the Demand Zero. You have to unmute, please. You have to give us your name and address of record and turn on your microphone.
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Name
Demand
and
Zero
address
started-
first. Name and
Lisa
address.
Dean, 22 Franks Way in Madison, Connecticut.
Thank you.
Demand Zero is a nonprofit, and we started in January 2019. About a month after my son died of a fentanyl overdose in the city of New Haven. Since then, our mission has been to provide resources as best we can by way of donations from our wonderful donors, to provide resources for law enforcement in order to try and stem the flow of deadly narcotics through the city of New Haven and surrounding communities. Since then, we have, as Chief mentioned, provided 2 drug detection canines, one of which is a dual purpose dogs. I think I saw some of the older people at a hearing when we talked about the dogs, also a canine police cruiser. And we also have some inner city programs going right now in terms of a scholarship program in Hill South and a trade night that we're trying to get off the ground. COVID has really interfered with a lot of our plans. We're also right now, along with Connecticut Violence Intervention, trying to put together a poster contest whereby awarding, and it doesn't matter what age, it's open to any age, of a teen, probably, to create a poster in order to warn students in New Haven about counterfeit pressed pills that are infiltrating the state of Connecticut and are very, it's a very, very dangerous situation we have going on. Many of the pills come in through our border. They look exactly like Adderall. They look exactly like Oxys and Perks and MDMAs and so forth. They're saying right now that 1 out of 4 of those pills are lethal and contain deadly amounts of fentanyl. So bad that a first-time user, never mind a person who's using, first-time users are dying. And I hate to be graphic, but before they hit the floor, this is what's going on. So in that vein, our communication is going toward PSAs. And toward that end, we felt strongly about helping out because we have the funds, as because our mission, the New Haven Police Department, again, so that we can keep the city of New Haven and the surrounding communities safer from those deadly narcotics.
Great, thank you. Appreciate your help. I have one question, but I'll hold off for my colleagues, starting with Alder Wingate. Any questions, sir?
Really don't have a question, Chair. I basically want to make a statement and, saying sorry for your loss. Start off that way, and thank you for partnering with the City of New Haven and pushing this important information and trying to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Alder Crespo. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do apologize for my delay. No questions at this time.
Alder Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too just want to, Ms. Dean, I remember you coming and the K-9 issue and you're turning just a horrible situation and with your family into something trying to help others. Thank you for that, truly. And I guess my only question is it sounds like the money goes that a lot is happening towards prevention and helping stop people from being users. Is the specific money here you're aiming at dealers, trying to stop dealers, and you're not going after sort of just people who are the users trying to arrest them? Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking to get sources of supply, but also specifically linked to deaths, not just dealers that, maybe in different areas. I mean, we also do that work as well. But with Lisa's, Dean's money and Demand Zero's money specifically, we're going to look at the cases where someone has died and try to get that product off the street. And I know that's near and dear to her heart, and we respect what she's doing for us. And so that's what we're going to use the money for. And I wanted to say too, none of that money will be used for overtime or anything like that, just other resources towards those cases.
Great, thank you. And again, thank you for all you're doing to try to make the city and surrounding towns safer.
Thank you, Alder Roth. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Alder Furlow, our majority leader, has signed on as well. And Alder Haywood would be next. I don't see her on. Is she on? No, I don't see her. Alder Singh, you're up next then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dean, my heart goes out to you, and I'm sorry for your loss. I also want to commend you for the resource you're bringing and collaborating with the New Haven PD. I want to thank you and appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Singh.
Thank you. And Alder Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dean, I too want to say thank you. It is a much needed program that is definitely needed, and that help goes towards the police department because it's far too many has died from the fentanyl. And I'm just so grateful that you utilize every piece of strength you had in you to give back to help others. Thank you so very much. And I thank you, Chief Jacobs, for making sure that this program is a success. I do really appreciate it. Thank you both. Thank you, Sir Chair.
Thank you, Alder Smith.
Thank you. Well, I want to say thank you also, and sorry for your loss as well. It's a great thing when other agencies can contribute to city departments, particularly for me, particularly the police department. My only question at this point that I have is for Chief Jacobson. There's money going toward the K-9 unit. And the question I had has been asked by others to me. When an officer retires, I know the K-9 retires as well. It's a package deal. Fortunately, no pension for the K-9. But when an officer gets promoted, whether it's to detective, sergeant, or lieutenant, what happens to the K-9 then?
So since I would say Chief Reyes started this, or maybe even Chief Campbell, the K-9 will move up with the officer. So say somebody's in patrol and they have a patrol K-9 and they're promoted to sergeant, we have several sergeants who still have their canines.
Mhm.
One of the canines that was donated is a drug detection only dog. And we've been told that that could be passed to another detective if needed, but we'll probably keep it with, right now it's Detective Sanchez who has him. If Detective Sanchez were promoted, and we could put him somewhere where he'd be in the detective bureau and still use the canine, that would be our first option. Say he makes sergeant and that happens. Frank is actually on the list to be promoted, not till down the road though. But if not, in that case, we could pass the dog if it was feasible and the training worked out. But the practice has been that the dog stays with the supervisor and moves up, and we keep the supervisor in the area that's still relevant with the dog, and that has worked out.
Okay, so if they, I think Sergeant Melendez was a canine handler as well. So she keeps the dog. That's kind of understandable. They're out in the field. But with lieutenant or captain, who's more of administrative or management position, they would still keep the dog and be on call per se?
Well, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know of a situation like that because the dogs are retired after, say, 5 to 8 years. And I think if someone has it as a patrol officer, then makes sergeant, by the time that 5 to 8 years is up, they're making lieutenant. So honestly, I've never seen that scenario, but we'll encounter it when we have it. But I would say to you that we'll try to accommodate. But you're right, as a lieutenant or captain, you're inside. So at that point, the dog would probably need to be retired. But that's a very rare instance. In my 24 years, I've never seen it.
No, I haven't either. And, I just hate to lose that investment that we have both on part of the city and police department, but also those people like Demand Zero who are providing us with funds to help sustain that program to lose those because they're still use. And I think they still can, even though a lieutenant or captain's in an office, if the need arises, I could still see the use.
Yeah, and
But
we'll
that's
we'll
just
protect
one of
against that, especially we'll definitely protect against that. That's a great question, and we'll especially in the case of the Demand Zero dogs.
yes. All right, thank you. We want to make sure that we address each issue in its totality at a time so we can complete that list and not save everything for the end. So can we open it up to the general public, comment from the public? Any questions? Any questions from the public? Anyone from the public want to comment on the Demand Zero offering? Trying to watch the hands. Anyone from the public want to comment on the Demand Zero offering? And the last time anyone from the public want to comment on the Demand Zero offering? Seeing none. Mr. Vice Chair.
So we have, thanks, Chair. So we have 3 items. I don't know if you want to close this one out, or do you want me to close this one out?
We can leave it to the end,
Yeah,
but just close the public portion regarding this particular item.
okay. Well, at this time, I make a motion to close this portion of the meeting tonight on this particular item.
Second.
Okay, it's moved in second. Any comments? None? All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Seeing none, it carries. We close that section. We invite Ms. Karigian, Ms. Dean, and Assistant Chief Jacobson to stay if you want to wait to hear at the end of our meeting for the final vote. And we move on to our next item. Thank you again. Our next item is the police or the fire department, the emergency management grant for a new fire education trailer. And I think I saw Rick Fontana and let's see, someone else, I guess they're coming in. Oh, our fire chief is. has come in.
Fired.
Chief Alston, how are you tonight?
Well, and yourself, sir. Good evening. Thank you for
I'm
having me.
doing well. I think there she is, Kayla Wallace. I don't know if Rebecca wants to get in on this one. We should bring her in anyway. It's a good time to bring her up.
And if we could get permission for the screen share, that would be great.
Okay, just give Mr. Lucas a minute. Everybody likes those graphics, huh?
Well, I figure we're all zoomed out, sir. I feel bad when it's the end of the day and our staff and your committees, we've all been doing this for over a year. I figure a picture's worth 1,000 words and a story's always better than a concept.
Yes, it is. Well, the floor is yours, Chief.
All right, sir, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present to the Public Safety Committee this evening. Our team, Rick Fontana, Kayla Wallace, Assistant Chief, Justin McCarthy, we're all doing multiple duties this evening. As you know, in our nation, the verdict in the Chauvin case was released. There were protests scheduled all over the nation and including in New Haven. And I'm in contact with Chief Dominguez, who is out there working to ensure the rights of our citizens and also the protection of our city and citizens as well. The public safety trailer, as you know, we've brought that out to many public events. It's 22 years old. It gets a lot of use. It didn't get a lot of use last year because many of our public events were canceled due to COVID. But the trailer itself is used not only for public safety education, but prevention education and community risk reduction. We also use it when we're out utilizing the trailer at events for recruitment. It is a citywide asset. We get invited to bring it out many times. It is a hit with the children, but we also know that we have an opportunity to talk to adults at that time. One of the things that we're pushing, many of our members in the fire marshal's office, including myself, last night took an exam, a state exam, to be certified as juvenile fire setter intervention specialist. It's a mouthful. So that we can not only give this public education, but also work with children who tend to set fires and young people, preteens who tend to set fires. One of the toughest times I had in the city of New Haven once was a young man who lit what he thought was just a paper towel at a school, and it caused some severe damage. And one of the things that happened was it was a very close time. He was almost going to be charged as a juvenile felon because of the damage that was done to the school. One thing that we did not have at the time, which we were trying to get off the ground, was a juvenile fire setter program, because we not only wanted to educate our young people, but provide community risk reduction. And this type of vehicle is a great tool for that. But it is only a portion of a larger community risk reduction plan and program. If we can reduce the number of fire setters and we can reduce the number of fires, even accidental fires, these trailers now, that one that you see in the picture is 22 years old. The one that we're looking to purchase has been modified now and is more relevant, that we can even teach seniors and those who are living in assisted living on how to protect themselves from accidental fires. And so we worked with Rick Fontana in the Office of Emergency Management to put a grant in place, the Aid to Firefighters grant. Our current trailer, its condition is unusable. We cannot use it at all. Currently, it's aged out of its use and capacity. The roof is leaking in multiple areas. There is mold and mildew in it, and it is beyond reasonable economic repair. What we're looking to purchase is a larger, more modern vehicle that allows for multiple stations and multiple uses and multiple presentations. And so we actually have simulated fire, not just smoke, where we can show how accidental fires happen in the home, how folks can protect themselves while calling 911. They can protect themselves and reduce the amount of damage and injury. And this is the one we hope to purchase. I'll turn it over to Rick Fontana because he does the mechanics on the grants, and he will actually explain the monies that we're requesting and the city contribution. Rick, I'll put that up for you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. And you kind of laid out a great picture of what we're doing. Good evening.
Please don't forget the name and addresses for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Coming right at you. So good evening, Alders. Rick Fontana, Emergency Management Director, 66 Putting Green Lane, Orange, Connecticut. And again, this trailer is something that we performed along myself and the chief and a couple of the folks from the fire marshal's office a couple of years ago. We put together a risk analysis and identified this trailer as really being needed. This past year, as the chief had mentioned, we wouldn't have gotten a lot of use out of it because training and education, not only in a school, but in a smaller 30-foot confined trailer would not have happened. But this trailer is very unique. It has stadium type seating, which you can get more folks involved. And as the chief mentioned, not only is it for school age children and higher education onto seniors and elderly, also those with disabilities. We have lacked this for quite some time, and the difference between this trailer and what we've used in the past. This is so much more interactive, and it's meant to be, an asset to the city, and it goes out to different functions on the green, not only into the school system. We have having 22,000 students. The fire marshal's office does spend a lot of time in the schools, but again, there are so many other groups that this will certainly be a welcome tool for. This is a $100,000 grant request. This is under FEMA, which is Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's under the Assistance to Firefighters grants, but this is under a safety and fire prevention grant. The cost that FEMA would share, as you see in front of you, $95,238.10. This grant only has a 5% match. So you'll see the 5%, and it's not quite 5%, but it's really close to. It's how the federal government does their analysis. So it will be the federal share, $95,238, and then the city's cost share, which is a small amount. And we'll literally got 22 years out of the last trailer, and likely get somewhere in that same type number, hopefully about 20 years. And again, I think based on community risk reduction and fire prevention, it's a small number, but this is something that's really, really needed. And I think we built a pretty good grant. You have to paint a picture of why it's needed. And we always used, the financial condition of the city, but here we are. The chief and I, we've come to you with Assistant Chief McCarthy, providing more grant funds. And when we can do things like this and give the local taxpayer some relief that this does not have to be purchased with local funds, I think it means a lot to everyone. I know this is a team effort between myself, the Chief McCarthy, and Kayla, who does the financial managing of it. I think we're a great team. Our goal is that we could obtain this grant along with the grant for a new Quint that came up before you. So we're working together, trying to make the city a safer place. And I think that's all I have at this point. So thank you for the opportunity, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. These grants start to filter out at the beginning of the summer and likely go for 60, usually 60 to 75 days or so. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
And also to add, just for the record, John Alston, 952 Grand Avenue, and the fire department share of $4,700, roughly $5,000. We do have that amount currently in our capital budget to cover the city's share. So we'll not come back and ask you for any additional funds.
Great. We like that part too. I'm sure you found that training very interesting on fire starters. I went through a lot of that training, and it's surprising why and how that happens. I'll ask.
What we'd like to do is, once we get our results of completion and we put together the package that we're going to present to the city, we'd like to bring it to the Public Safety Committee first, for first look, if you would allow us to do that.
Certainly, we would like that. Thank you. I just want to offer Ms. Wallace and our Deputy CAO, Ms. Bombero, if they wanted to contribute anything to their presentation.
I think the experts covered it. Thank you.
A great team, and I just want to congratulate them for another job well done.
Thank you.
Great. All right, I'll start with my colleagues then, starting with my Vice Chair, Alder Wingate. Any questions, sir?
I have a question, but it's hard to not give these guys praise before you start asking questions. Chair, they are a good team. There ain't no whole lot to it, right? They are a great team, and they're always trying to push the envelope for training, development, safer streets. I like the fact that they are honestly trying to get the younger group involved and, understanding fires, fire prevention, and all those sorts of things. So my question to Rick and John, can we get the money matching even lower? Y'all went from 10 to 5. Can we get it?
5%?
Can we get it even lower? I mean, these rates right now is kind of good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although we can ask, but in my 36 years, take the 5 and leave the table.
Okay. All right. Just trying to save the city a little money, but y'all did a phenomenal job, and I'm gonna hold you to it. I want to see the vehicle as well.
Much obliged. Thank you, sir.
Well, look, they already cut it. It was 10%. They cut it to 5%.
Listen. I mean, we about to come out of this thing. We got to get it while we can.
Okay, great. Alder Crespo, any questions? He may be a little in stalled mode, so we just move over and we'll come back to him. Alder Roth.
Thanks, Chair Antunes, and thanks for your presentation. I have no questions.
Thank you. Alder Haywood, I haven't seen Alder Haywood come on yet. Alder Singh, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank this team for the effort and looking forward and, seeing that we need this resource for education, for our community and our schools and the senior, like the chief mentioned. And it's a great venture, to look forward ahead and access these grant and so we can go forward to, purchasing these equipment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alder Smith.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll go back around to Alder Crespo. You come back on. You have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions. I looked at the numbers, and I think the fire department will have to pay $4,761.90.
Yes, which is actually less than 10%.
Right. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Anytime we can get a new equipment for cheap cost. So I got no questions. I would just be in agreement. Let's get it.
Alder Crespo, you appeared like magic, is it?
He's there twice, right?
Now you see me once.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I had a couple of quick questions. Is there any trade-in value to our old one? Will we get anything back on that?
With the mold and mildew, no, sir. I would look to destroy it, either salvage it as scrap and maybe possibly for the trailer, auction it off. But in terms of human occupancy with the mold and mildew, any type of remediation would cost us money. I would just look to send it off into that great beyond.
I'm sure the frame is still pretty good. It's been kind of protected all these years. My second question is, In that fire training with this vehicle, is there any training included for the people living on the second and third levels? We have a lot of apartment dwellers in the city. So as far as fire escape and protection,
Yeah.
and
And
will
Rick
that be
did-
enhanced with the new vehicle?
Yes. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, great. That's a great question. I should have mentioned this actually has a higher level window with an escape ladder as well for training. So, yeah, very interactive and great question.
Good.
And our old trailer had that too, but as Rick said, it's this one's a lot higher. So.
Great. If there's no more other questions from my colleagues, we'll turn it to the public. Is there anyone from the public who has questions or would like to testify on this item? Is there anyone from the public who would like to testify on this item? For the third time, is there anyone from the public who'd like to testify on this item? Seeing none,
At this time, Chair, I will move to close the public portion of this item.
Second?
moved in second. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And this part of this item is, public portion is closed. And thank you again. We'll do our voting at the end for each item. If you want to stay around to listen to that, or you could watch it on the recordings later. But we invite you to stay. Each part of our meeting is interesting. And now we'd like to move on to the third portion, item 2021-0105, a request from Local 884 for a public hearing regarding working conditions of our Emergency Communications Center. Mr. Lucas, would you bring the guests in? And I see Alda Haywood has arrived. Welcome, Alda Haywood.
Good evening.
There you are.
Good evening.
Okay, before we get started, I will say this. See, is everyone in? See, I think we have 884-3144 wanted to get involved in this as well. Kathleen Simpson wanted to bring on.
You just want to bring everyone in at the same time, Mr. Chair?
Well, Kathleen Simpson, our Corporation Counsel, would be nice for her to sit in and listen.
And we can bring everyone in if you want.
Well, you know what? Let's just bring her and then we will move on from there, just so that she gets a flavor for the whole piece of the complaint.
She's in.
Okay, and I will ask all of our guests to be sure to give us your name and address of record at the beginning of your presentation. And we will start with you, Ms. Lechberg. Ask me.
Good evening, Alder, and some member of the committee. I had two separate discussions because there's two separate departments, and there are individual issues for each one of them. I don't know how you want to handle it. I did not prepare since they were two separate departments. I didn't.
Why don't we start with the security? Because I think even the police are still here. They can listen in just to get a flavor of what's going on.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Alder Antunes and member of the committee, thank you for listening. Local 884 very rarely comes out and speaks to the public and to the alders about our concerns, but we felt that this is, we have a very serious situation. We represent approximately 57 school security officers.
Lori, name and address, please.
My apologies. I'm Lori Lichtenberg, president of Local 884. I live at 152 Prospect Avenue, Shelton, Connecticut.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My apologies. So we represent about 57 school security officers. Their position requires daily challenging balancing acts. On one hand, gaining the trust and respect of students, and on the other, maintaining discipline and order in school. Charged with upholding policy and procedures of the department, school principals have an individual set of rules and procedures for which they demand compliance. To add further stress, the majority of on-site base officers are constantly looking over their shoulder, concerned for who is monitoring their movements through video cameras. Supervision by means of video is a violation of city policy. School security historically has been a very stable group of officers. Roughly half of the officers are New Haven residents and hired before the year 2000. Between the years 2008 and 2006, the group remained stable with no new hires. Thaddeus Reddish became department head at the start of the 2016 school year, and much changed. While in many aspects he modernized the force, this change occurred through intimidation, favoritism, and direct dealing. Approximately 7 members of the department are currently out on paid administrative leave, including officers and supervisors, many since October 2020. A select group of officers have been favored with advanced training, special privilege, and excess overtime. Anyone who objects to this patronage pattern suffers retaliation or chooses to keep a low profile to avoid being the fray. Within the last 4 years, 10 long-term officers have retired, resigned, or separated from service. Most report that they are just too exhausted to deal with the hostility, intimidation, and tension in the department. While Reddish modernized some departmental functions, it has come at the expense of team cohesion. He publicly undermines the union, and there is an us versus them division. Local had to resort to filing state labor actions just to attain public documents to discover the extent of the operations. The union advocated for the implementation of an electronic mass communication system to modernize the overtime distribution system and provide transparency on the hours and assignments awarded. Such a system would replace the outmoded telephone tree. It would also require all personnel to be trained so that they can be up to speed on the emerging use of technology in their workplace. Instead of embracing these time-saving procedures, Reddish undermined its implementation. In direct violation of MIRA, Reddish has not negotiated the impact of the changing job duties. Beyond on-site officer patrolling of the school halls and monitoring building access, security has evolved into remote video surveillance and monitoring. It also now involves roving patrols and 24-hour patrols at certain high-valued locations. Every officer I've talked to would have appreciated the opportunity to advance their skills and change their routine. Instead, Reddish handpicked a select group of individuals to benefit from these professional and financial rewards. And the financial benefits for the small group is not insignificant. As the students return to school in the post-COVID world, new hires are needed to bolster the depleted ranks. Most recently, 3 new officers were added despite the fact that there are no working supervisors to properly onboard, train, and supervise new hires. The local brought our concerns to management at a level, both on the BoE side as well as the city side. Rather than curbing Reddish's rogue behavior, the intimidation and harassment continues. The updating Organization of the job descriptions and operations are pushed off to the start of contract negotiations. Change is difficult in itself. However, the local demands to be part of the discussion and the solution. We want everyone to have the opportunity and the desire to move their careers forward and share in the financial rewards. And most importantly, we want every employee to come to work, perform to the best of their ability, and be valued and appreciated. School security officers worked throughout the COVID shutdown. They monitored and patrolled school parking lots and assisted with the school lunch distribution program. Officers demonstrated their commitment to the city and the school board. The city needs to reciprocate with better treatment towards them. Thank you. That's the end of my prepared remarks.
Okay. Let's first ask my colleagues here. Starting with Vice Chair, do you have questions for the 884 President? Caller Wingate?
Yes, Chair. I just want to, when you read things, you absorb them, but I just want to take a step back because
Yeah.
I want to know if I heard what I thought I heard.
Okay.
In reference to, you said that this union, you have a grievance procedure.
We do.
What does that procedure look like to me?
Disputes between employees and employers, you start at the lowest possible level. If an officer has an issue, they bring it to us. We discuss with, at the lowest possible level, which might be the supervisor, in this case, Reddish. If we can't get any traction there, any response to response, then we go and we file a grievance at the next level, which is through labor relations. We had asked in this process, we had been filing problems with overtime issues and other things, and we were just not getting the information that we needed. And when we went through the grievance, we still weren't getting from labor relations, we weren't getting the information we needed. So then we had to file a state labor charge in order to force the information to come forth.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
That's all you had?
Well, no, I have more. She says a lot. I don't want to take up all the time. I don't want to go too far with it right now.
Okay.
But I want to hear, I hear her plight of it and the issues and complications that she's driving through. Dealing with a lot of these cases in my profession. I just want to hear, what is the procedure? What does that look like from their process of, talking to management, talking to HR, talking to labor. From my understanding, she's doing all her steps or have done all her steps to try to problem solve or resolute what is actually happening. Information requests. That's a very important part of that, right? Information requests, right? That's a very, very important part of that. She should not be prohibited from getting any information requests. But I'm not.
We can come back around to if you want.
Okay, all right.
All right, that's good. Let me just say this, so everyone is in the same place, and then I'll ask one quick, I think, important question. As a board of alders, we don't get involved in any sort of labor agreements or labor disputes. You have lawyers, you have negotiators, they all deal with those things and set up the policies and procedure and how you move forward. So we don't get involved in those. And what we want to do here is try and understand the management and how our managers are performing their service. Question I had was, you represent the security officers do you represent the supervisors too, or is that 3144?
Exactly. Harold Brooks represents the supervisors.
Okay. All right, that answers my question. We'll move on to the next person, Alder Crespo. You have questions for the president?
No question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Alder Roth, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you also for that framing. I do find it's a little confusing as to sort of, I don't know if Ms. Simpson is going to speak and kind of what exactly what our role is and what state kind of the kind of disputes are at. So I find it a little complicated to ask questions. I guess if we're just asking about trying to understand in this forum the concerns being raised by the union, I can kind of ask on those questions. But again, I do find sort of the structure a little confusing. I guess one question I have is in the letter we received, it talked about workplace violence complaints, which was concerning to read. And it was unclear to me though, like who's committing the violence against whom. Was it like violence that the officers are seeing and it's not being, so I just wasn't sure what that referred to.
If I can just go back, I appreciate that the board, the alders is not the place where we negotiate contracts and settle grievances. I understand that. The reason why we came this direction is because we had to get some traction on resolving the workplace violence complaints that are being thrown around and resolved. And workplace violence is not just physical violence, it's intimidation, it's harassment, it's retaliation. It's all those things. And that's what's happening on to multiple people. And there are multiple charges from officers against Reddish, then has countermanded, I believe, I'm not privy to that, but against officers. And so it's really become a very toxic environment. People are afraid to speak up and say, to say that there's a problem because they're so afraid of retaliation.
All right, before I go to back to Alder Wingate, just to answer concern of Alder Roth, this is a difficult process because there's, it's not our responsibility per se, but what we're looking for is to better manage the city side of the services. We want to be sure that we understand the problem. That's why I want to go around to all my colleagues first so that we understand what the concern is, because we can't do anything, can't even comment on it unless we understand what they're talking about. That's number one. And number two, we want to make certain that the different departments, whether it's labor relations, human resources, or any of the others, are doing what they should do, because the city's at the bottom of it. We don't want to lose any, not only respect, but cases in court as well. And I will move it on. I just want to recognize Alder Kim Edwards, who's also joined us. So are you good, Alder Roth? Set for now?
I think Vice, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Vice Chair Wingate had another question, and I'll defer to him and then maybe ask another question.
Okay, Alder Wingate.
Yes, so understanding that we can't dive into too much, thanks, Chair. But I think I can ask these questions.
Okay.
Where are you at in your procedures now of complaints? And we would like to be informed of the outcomes, right? As a body, right? Like where are you at now in your processes, right? And I think we can ask to follow up to hear more of your outcomes. Because the ultimate goal is to try to get resolutions on your outcomes, right? Right. It's two sides to the story. We hearing your side, right? We have the labor person here. But at the same time, my interest will be in knowing where you are at this present time in your, and your next steps. This is a difficult one.
Yeah, it is.
But you can you can handle it. You can handle it. It's okay. So
thank you. I appreciate your support. It's been a real hard struggle. I mean, COVID knocked the wind out of a lot of sails. Our contract expired in June 30th of 2020. And, COVID hit at the same time. We weren't able to meet. Then things got delayed, and we were still trying to talk, and, this remote business trying to, bring in and stuff like that. I mean, we are at a point now, we're scheduled to have a discussion. Through our investigation, we discovered that the whole structure of the department has changed. I mean, the fact that there are no working supervisors and you have 60 people, 60 officers who are working in 50 plus school buildings. How do you supervise 50 people and 60 people in 50 different locations? I ask you. How does he do that? Well, he's taking our people and making them supervisors, but he's not coming to us and saying that. He's also changing the structure of it. Technology has improved. And so now they're doing roving patrols and they're doing a lot more of the technology engines. It all has changed. And he hasn't come to us, and we haven't been able to get him to come and say, come on, you got to talk about this. I mean, just today, I was talking to a person who's working a third shift. The contract only allows for him to have a second, having a first and a second shift. So, all this has changed, and we're all in limbo and can't get any resolutions on this. And then I was just hit today with, 3 Loudermill hearings on discipline issues. But at the basic level, again, one of these situations was it should have been addressed at the lowest possible level. You had an employee who wasn't doing something right. Did you have a counseling session with him? No, it jumps to labor relations and goes to a Loudermill hearing. So, there's just so much animosity, and so it's just hard to trudge through this all and get resolutions.
Are you good, Alder Wingate?
Yeah, I'm good for now.
All right. I want to divert a little bit from the standard process because I know Attorney Simpson has some thoughts and ideas, and she's anxious to say something. I'd like to hear the rebuttal there on what the labor relations side of it is. First, let me ask Mr. Lucas, has anybody from the Board of Ed showed up yet? Lucas?
Sorry, I was muted, sir. What did you say?
Did anybody from Board of Ed show up yet?
We have no representation at this time from the public schools, no, sir, that I can see.
I didn't see any either. No names that I recognize.
They can raise their hand if they are, given that some do not have their full names. I can't tell.
Okay. All right. So if my colleagues don't mind, I'd like to turn over to Attorney Simpson, starting off with a name and address, please. You have to unmute, please.
Why not? I know better by now, but thank you. Thank you, Chairman Tunes and this honorable Alderman, and Alderwoman, and for inviting me to this meeting. And my name is Kathleen Simpson. My address is 115 Baum 4th Avenue, Baum 4th Street, sorry, Bridgeport, Connecticut, 06605. And I would tell you that there's obviously a different perspective with in terms of the state of what is going on with labor relations and the status of pending matters. And I guess I'll go to the first issue raised about labor relations issues that are not being resolved allegedly. And we are in contract negotiations with 884, and we did have to put them off because of COVID. And that was by agreement. And since March, we were trying to get dates to start we call it a bump and run, which is ground rules, and you schedule dates to go forward with contract negotiations. We have 6 contracts open. So we're all kind of there, and everyone was kind of in the same boat of having to wait and see because of COVID and obviously the safety issues that had to be dealt with first and foremost. And there were a lot of personnel, COVID, and the union president's absolutely correct. There were a lot of issues with safety. And I will tell you, 884 and 3144 were very helpful. Both union presidents and leadership from the beginning were very helpful in trying to help us deal with the personnel situations, teleworking, COVID exposure, leaves. It was all new. And we really could not have done all that without that assistance. So I will start with that. I will also say that so COVID delayed everything in a lot of ways. So, and then the remedies with respect to compensation, job duties, changes in classification, job descriptions and schedules, which are all both an issue for PSAP, which you'll hear, and the Board of Education officers, security officers, are something that, yes, we have to do under contract negotiations. We did implement a 12-hour schedule in response to safety. That was part of a grievance. We've since gone back to the 8-hour schedule. I won't get into that because that's subject to a grievance. The union's correct. There was a charge filed with the labor board. It did have the previous colleague, Scott Nabel, was handling that. It did involve an information request. I believe that the information was provided, and I'm not sure again why there was a delay, but it was eventually provided. And also there were things addressed about schedules, compensation, training, which we agree are all something that we want to do in our subcommittees. We start contract negotiations, which is going to be May 17th. And we think it's important and unique to have subcommittees on the PSAP issues and the Board of Ed issues that really belong in contract negotiations. And also, of course, what is also involved is the budget. So you can't make changes without involving the budget, and also getting approval from the Board of Alders if you make a change to the contract, which is part of the process. So I'll address that. We have tried to, so the bump and run to commence negotiations for 884 is scheduled for 5/17 at 10 a.m. We also, in addition to agreeing to have subcommittees, we've also agreed to start having monthly labor management meetings. And we've been a little swamped, all of us. So we're hoping to have the first labor management meeting after our first bump and run, so we can address issues that aren't part of contract negotiations. And I know it gets confusing, but some are part of the contract, present contract, and some are stuff that we want to do that are new things that we need to negotiate. The other issue is that that there was an email that the union sent on 3/9/21 to members. It was sent on a city email informing the members that such topics such as compensation, shifts, schedules, training can only be achieved through contract negotiations. So that our hands are tied a little bit with there. So we've not been dragging our feet. We've been very, and I don't want to get into all that, but we've been working hard to get that started. The other issue is the MPP filed by the union was withdrawn. And so I consider it resolved, but again, the issues about compensation, schedules, training, those issues are part of, we still believe are start of reforming. And the union was extremely, has been, since I started, working with us to look at subcommittees and discussing the issues and telling us about it. So there's no doubt there. I have plenty of emails and meetings and things that about these issues. So we are aware of them. The other issue is with these, there's a lot of ongoing investigations right now. And I will say this, that Chief Reddish, as well as the employees involved, all have due process rights. And these allegations are being investigated. We have the allegations regarding against Chief Reddish must be investigated by Human Resources, because I have to hear any appeals of discipline by executive managers to which Chief Reddish is a member. So I cannot investigate an executive manager, because then I end up with a conflict if there's an appeal, because that's the appeal process. We have, because HR has been backlogged for many, and Steve Brandy for many reasons, we have recently been able to get a consultant, an investigation firm, who is investigating some of these issues that have been pending at Human Resources. I want to also make it clear, currently there's only one supervisor on administrative leave with pay, and that's being investigated by the consultant. And one supervisor is on medical leave with a pending investigation. Another supervisor retired before their investigation was finished, I guess. And then another supervisor is terminated since then. So we only have one now, and at this juncture. There are 3 security officers currently on an 884 that are under investigation on administrative leave with pay. We are trying to process those quickly. We also do not want to we want to make sure it's a thorough investigation and that it's done properly. And I can't speak anymore to those. I don't, because it's personal issues. They're not subject to, right now, they're not public information. That's not to say they won't become public information at some point. And certainly anything that the Board of Auditors needs or information that's you certainly can have. The other issue that I think that's important to bring up is that I advise supervisors and managers on how to best interpret the contract and how to best deal with discipline issues, not just me, but labor relations. And we do it often in conjunction with Human Resources and Corporation Counsel. Because again, you're so right, the comment made that we want to limit liability. We want to make sure people are treated consistently, fairly, and make sure their due process rights are not violated. So that I wanted to make sure that that point was made across, that that we don't make decisions for managers. They have to make the ultimate decision, but there's nothing wrong, nor is it improper to seek consultation. It's our job with Corporation Counsel or Labor Relations or Human Resources. Well, we hope we're helpful. And finally, I just wanted to point that, that under section 12-5, 8-4 of the city's code of ethics, it states that public officials and municipal employees shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or affronts upon the character, motives, or intents of other public officials or municipal employees or members of the public. We're all, right now, these are pending issues. So I can't comment, and I want to make sure everyone's due process rights are not violated, and to make sure that we don't come to judgment until we have all the information and we get to resolution. I'm not saying that we have been fast. I'm not saying we've been facing delays. Some of it's due to short staffing, like we all have. We're getting ourselves shored up, hopefully. Corporation Counsel hired Michelle Dupre, who I think she's on the call, but not in the room. And she's been hired, and we're very lucky to kind of oversee the labor relations issues and to ensure that we limit liability. So I appreciate so much the frustration that 884 has presented. I'm not saying I agree with everything they said, but I appreciate it. And I will say it again. This union, especially Lori, has worked very well with us, and they do cooperate. So I understand, and I hope we can alleviate this frustration going forward and move things more quickly for things. So with that, I think I've taken up enough time. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, let me start off this way. And Mr. Brooks, we didn't leave you out. We will include you, and maybe you can comment on this part. But I present the question for the three of you, Mr. Brooks, Ms. Lechtenberg.
Yes,
Can I call you Lori? Just to
you
make
certainly may.
and Attorney Simpson. My concern was with the supervisors to begin with. If they're talking about a lack of supervision, these are areas where we have security in our schools, and I'm not too concerned or as concerned with those schools that have SROs, but those that don't, that have school security in them, and they're working many hours, 3 shifts. I mean, Lori said that they were working 3 shifts. Is there a state law as far as labor goes that they can't work that many hours continuously?
No one person works 3 shifts.
Okay,
No,
okay,
no
that
one
was the
person has
understanding.
worked 24 hours, but there now
Okay.
are people who are working
You said they were working
8 to 4, and then a noon shift, an afternoon shift, and then the overnight shift.
Okay, all right, and the again, the other concern I had, yeah, that was good. The other concern I had was when we get into liabilities. I mean, here we're talking a number of security officers and missing, I think I counted 4 supervisors. And I mean, that to me, that it's kind of dangerous to have that number of employees out there without any type of supervision. And I think that's where Mr. Brooks can come in as well.
Thank you, Chairman Antunes, and good evening to the alders.
Name and address, please, sir.
Alderwoman. My name is Harold Brooks. I am the president of Local 314 Ford Supervisors and Management Union. I live in the city of New Haven. My address is 170 Hemlock Road, New Haven.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I wanted to echo a lot of what Lori said. I want to give credence to that. And Lori and I have been talking and trying to mull over and deal with this situation, both at school security on the board side, as well as PSAT. And so our frustration, as Kathleen put it, it is larger than life. I'll say it like that. We're very frustrated, extremely. I will say this, that given that this is an issue with personnel files and personnel issues, I don't want to delve too much into that. But I will say that a lot of the intimidation, coercion, and favoritism is going on in the department and is done by Thaddeus Reddish. I have very, very serious concerns because we raised the issue about the supervisors some time ago, and I didn't get a response. We reached out to him. I reached out to his superiors. I reached out to the superintendent. No response. No one responded. We filed a grievance. And again, how do you resolve these issues is at the lowest level of the contract. So to answer your question, Alderman Wingate, our contract mirrors the same as 884. Grievance procedure, their number might be different. Ours is 22. But the grievance procedure, step 1 of the complaint or grievance process is that the employee or the union agent will speak to the department head or to the supervisor. So in Lori's case, she would speak to somebody in my union. And if that's not resolved, they will go to the department head. If it's not resolved, they reduce it to writing. Once it's in writing, the management department head has so many days to answer it. Then it's moved up to the second level. If it's not resolved, it then moves up to the third step hearing, which would be hearing in labor relations. That process is being bypassed, where everything is going from step one, it's not literally happening, and it's going straight to labor relations. So we now have to write a grievance and forward it to labor relations. At times we'll get a response from them. Sometimes we won't get a response from them. Then we have to move to the third step to have a third step hearing. Interesting enough, I spoke, or at least tried to speak to Mr. Reddish, and he refused to return my call. I sent him a text, and his response was, "Who is this?" Told him who I was, and if he could please give me a call. No response. And it's been my experience since 2020 that most department heads now don't want to talk to the union, or at least they don't speak to us directly. I was told that personally, not only by folks on the city side, but on the board side, that they cannot speak to us directly. Everything has to go through labor relations. That is what borns a lot of the frustration. Mr. Reddish was also heard making comments like he doesn't care about the unions. That's not his problem. He doesn't care. They can go to the union all they want. And so at this point, because the members are coming to the unions, both supervisors and 884 folks are coming to the supervisor. And by the way, I do have 884 folks come to me as well. And so the concern is, if a person can make those kind of comments and then they view and see people going out on administrative leave, whether it's factual, whether it's not, whether it's, it's all alleged until there's a hearing and there's a decision made. But nonetheless, when people see that kind of treatment happening, they're immediately afraid. And so they stop speaking up. They stop attending union meetings to raise the issues. And so this is a real concern. I have a number of people in my bargaining unit have filed workplace complaints. I did not know that they hired an outside firm. I did put in a request. I have yet to get that request of how many complaints have been put in since 2020 or 2019 and 2020 in HR, and the status of those complaints, as well as the outcome. If there was a decision made, I have yet to get that information. And so, as you can see, the folks are extremely concerned. They're extremely troubled. Some of my members mentioned to me about the overtime. They mentioned to me very specifically that Reddish has certain people that he uses to watch the cameras. Allegedly, I was told that individuals are allowed to work remotely. Others are demanded to come into the school. And those are some of the charges that were brought up against some of the employees. But yet this practice is still going on. And so people are afraid, because if they're not in the inner circle or a part of the select group, they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to even come to the union about it, because the union can do nothing. And that's the complaint I'm hearing, not only from 3144 members, but from 884 folks, that the unions can do nothing. They put a complaint into HR. It goes unanswered for months on end. And so they can't get relief there. This administration has been pro-management. And while I am the supervisor union, I represent supervisors, we too are part of a union. And there are some issues, as Kathleen pointed out, that everyone has due process and due those rights, and so afforded to them. And so our union has filed numerous grievances. Last year, we filed a total of 50 grievances. This year, we're up to 26 grievances. And so there are a lot of concerns. One of the things I would also point out to the board is that the people, I mentioned that already, the overtime distribution and those working the cameras. The supervision should not be done by 884. It should be done by Local 3144. And Thaddeus Reddish has been having 884 employees do the supervision through camera, monitoring employees. And again, I know that was the issue with 884. I think moving forward, 3144 and 884 will be partnering together. So we'll be filing charges together. And so we wanted to, because again, we're stronger together than we are divided. And while they are the clerical union, we are a supervisor union. Mr. Reddish is not just violating their contract, but he's violating the supervisor's contract. And so those are very much concerns. He's a very tall man, and so sometimes he uses his body language to approach people, to intimidate them. And so I can't get into details because, as Kathleen already mentioned, one of the supervisors is out on that, but we had a complaint in, and that complaint went through the grievance process. And so after we filed that grievance in February, I think it was April. Yes, April. They sent me a notice saying that they're returning the grievance because of lack of facts or lack of information. So we resent it. I believe it was Monday. But nonetheless, that is a serious complaint. A very serious complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I'd like to give Attorney Simpson an opportunity to respond, and then I would like to get back to my colleagues to see if they have any questions for any of the three of you. Alder Simpson.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Attorney
Okay.
Simpson.
That's all right.
I
Thank
promoted you, see?
I wanted to indicate that I think it's I think I did send an email to Harold, I'm sorry, President Brooks, because one of his members was raised concerns at PSAP about concerns that also involve 884 and the schedules and things. And I thought that'd be a great idea to maybe bring everyone together in a subcommittee to kind of look at those things. So instead of, rather than filing charges, I think it would be helpful to try to address these matters and in terms of they're mutual. And a lot of these things, again, we can't do without contract negotiations. With respect to I can say that there's allegations that about Chief Reddish that are pending. There's allegations that members have made against other members, and they're under investigation. It is taking a longer time. We are getting it. HR is getting help to get things investigated. So, and we're aware of that. And we can't just let things not go investigated, even if they don't have merits, because that could rate with liability. We have to take every complaint seriously. So that's the process. So we're hoping that we don't end up with a lot of investigations going forward and a lot of issues with performance issues and discipline. That's not the goal. And I don't enjoy being my role of labor relations. I enjoy problem solving, doing training, getting things better for employees, and hopefully making it a professional workplace for everyone. And yeah, working on the things like retention, recruitment, the kind of things that, we all want. In terms of, I think that with the question, which is a very good one about the supervision and the amount, President Brooks, maybe you can answer this. Is there only 4 supervisors right now that supervise all of the employees?
Yes. So
yeah,
there are only 4.
Okay, so that's something that, that's something, again, I'll have to follow up with, HR and and I think we can do it collectively to see what that structure is, if that works. It's a good point. I really can't answer that, and I wasn't prepared to, and I think that's an issue, though, that we can follow up on. And certainly, again, it goes to budget, job descriptions, and numbers and things like that. And I don't know how many resource officers, to be honest, are in the school system right now. So I think there was a time when they were taken out, and they might be coming back in. I don't believe there's any resource officers at all in the schools, but I'll have to double check because of COVID, they weren't there and bringing back kids in. So I'm not sure where the status of that is. But you raised an excellent point. I just think I have to table it if that's helpful. I mean, and not helpful, but if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what else. I can only speak to the fact that in terms of processing grievances and where they are in decisions, we review them. We can agree to disagree. We have been, processing and looking at them. We've looked at the average grievances. Since I've been on, they really haven't changed, the amount of grievances filed by each union. I can get you that information. They're pretty consistent in terms of the number and types. And we have a lot of COVID-related grievances and issues that are unique. And I'm not, and they're unique to the SPMA, and the Labor Board. So.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Brooks, just a brief one so I can get my colleagues in.
Yeah, I just want to point out that to Kathleen's point, historically, we've had, 7 or more supervisors, but as folks retired, they did not replace them. So I just want to let the board know that.
Well, thank you, Harold. That's helpful to me too, to know that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we left off last with Alder Roth, I think. So Alder Haywood would be up next.
Hang in there, Joel. We'll get it there.
Alder Haywood, do you have a question?
I sent an email to everybody and said, stand by.
Very good, very good.
I don't hear Alder Haywood in there. Let's move. Alder Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no question at this time.
Alder Smith.
Again.
Isn't there a zero tolerance of violence in the city? This is to Ms. Simpson.
No, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm sorry.
Hold on a second. Mr. Lucas, you need to mute your microphone there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask the question again. Is there a no violence ordinance or in the city?
I'm sorry, is that for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. There is a, yes, well, there's a workplace, I shouldn't call it a workplace violence policy. That's what it's called. It should be called an anti-workplace violence policy, but there is a workplace violence policy, an which it's on the internet.
Zero.
And I think they're also, I'm sorry.
The zero workplace violence.
Yeah, right. It's zero tolerance. And there's also other levels of, it could be bullying, intimidation, but it's on there. And also there is something, generally it's generally also part of certain people's job descriptions, obviously, to maintain, and especially if you're in security, to maintain in your job description, to maintain, security and being violent with each other would be against your job description and make you probably unfit for or unqualified for that job.
Thank you. I never read that portion in the workplace, zero tolerance of workplace violence, but it concerns me because I'm hearing also of a lot of intimidation and a lot of threats that's coming from this particular individual. And it frightens me to the fact to where I'm afraid someone may end up getting hurt. And we're not doing anything in regards to practicing what the policy that has been written by the city of New Haven with zero tolerance. how are you plan on rectifying this situation that's going on in regards to the policy which calls for zero tolerance?
Well, that first of all, we have to do a thorough and fair investigation. Once we get the findings, then we have to have if there's disciplinary action being contemplated, there has to be a due process hearing, because if you're taking away someone's livelihood, or if you're suspending someone, that is considered a property interest, and they have an opportunity to respond to those allegations, and then appropriate discipline would be issued. With respect to, there's a different executive management falls under human resources, and due process hearings with employees would fall under labor relations. And that is the process. And right now we don't have any substantiated, I shouldn't say that, there are some substantiated allegations of workplace violence, but those are in process right now that are not been fully disposed or just been recently disposed. So I can't speak to those individually. Of course, once things become subject to public disclosure under freedom of information, this panel, this board can have anything and everything they're entitled to, as the public would. And of course, the union gets advanced information in order to represent members. And all I can do is speak to is that we have to follow the process, which is taking a long time.
I don't know if I'm going to be speaking out of terms, but it bothers me when I receive a letter stating that a supervisor threatened an individual with a gun, that they carry a gun. And this was stated that Mr. Radish had said to an individual, and it's in a letter form. It bothers me to the fact that nothing was taking place, and the letter looked like it was circulated through the city, through union, and also through labor relation in regards to that. And the individuals are fearful for their life. And that's why I've asked you about that. And I'll ask you again, what are we doing in regards to the zero tolerance policy that is happening in this department to prevent it from escalating any more than what it is already?
I can only answer you that these issues are under investigation, and appropriate action will be taken should the allegations be substantiated. And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Is it appropriate? Is it appropriate to say that it's okay for the victims to be sent home without be on leave versus the violator?
I can't comment on that right now. It's an HR matter. It's been our investigation it falls under HR's jurisdiction. And I can't comment any further about the actions taken with different members and with Chief Reddish. And I apologize, it just wouldn't be appropriate, because if there's pending charges and there's due process rights of all the parties involved.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to revert back. I have so many questions that I want to ask, but I just need to pull back for just a minute. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, for the record, let everyone know that I personally attempted to make certain that Dad Reddish was notified of this meeting and invite him to come. I've tried to reach out to some of the board members on the Board of Education and got no response from any of those. So, I was hoping that they would be here after seeing notice of it, but I don't see any on as yet. Let's see, Smith was last, so we're back around to you, my Vice Chair, Alder Wingate.
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of moving parts here. And that's like, I was trying to set the table earlier to follow up on these steps that's going to be happening. From my understanding, there's a due process that has to happen. I hear about COVID. I understand about the Zoom meetings and people can't meet on a regular basis like they used to. But I'm really interested in hearing the next steps on what is actually happening.
All right, you're directing that to Attorney Simpson?
Well, actually, that goes to the three of them, actually, because ultimately they got to figure these things out. Right. Ultimately, they have to figure these things out. I mean, I can throw out suggestions, but I don't know if I can throw out suggestions, right? Right. So there's a thing whereas, trying to problem solve it or just listen to it tonight. So I'm choosing to listen to it tonight to try to see where they go from here. And, because it is a due process. It is, right? It is a due process, right? And I'm trying to just absorb it tonight to try to get it, to understand how can we really help as a board, right? Because no one wants to, we don't want the dysfunction for the city. We don't want that, right? On both sides, right? So my thing is, I understand that there's best practice ways that we can be doing things. They can be meeting more. They can be having monthly meetings. They can be having so many things that they can be doing to me, but they got to get over this hurdle first. And the only way I guess they can get over the hurdle is to get into the room and see what's next and come back to the board to hear where they're at.
All right, let's go here, if you would. We have somewhat of a similar issue with the emergency communications. Let's bring them in and save our suggestions for the end. Get some commitments from the three, or in this case, four, with the communications management as well, so that they can come back later with something. All right. Is that good for colleagues? Let's bring in the other part of the complaint being communications, because we're starting to get into the more broad part and similar issues on the other side. Everyone in agreement there?
Yes,
all right, so we will go back around and start with Lori on the emergency communications. I hate the name PSAP, so I don't use that. Sounds
We
so
use
dirty.
PSAP all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't sound professional. And I have support from Director Pete, right? So give us the concerns on that part.
Yeah, and I just want to just go back to Alder Wingate. We are all trying to talk and move this thing forward. I think why the biggest reason why I'm here is we need to. It's been dragging, and it needs to be more attention needs to be paid to get a to reach the resolution. Because there's two parts. We have, the personnel problems, and then we have the operational problems. But in order to get resolution, we need, one thing will help the other thing. If we get the personnel problems, that will help operations. If we get the operations better, then that will help the personnel problems. But we're talking, but it just needs to get in a higher gear.
Right, and I think the personnel problems is more the union laborers deal in process or procedure. Seeing that it's getting done is something more that we as a board of alders could look at.
Right.
Making the process more efficient, more timely.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what we're really asking for. So I'll bring back to my presentation on public safety communications, or PSAP, as we know.
Okay, we welcome the Director Pete and Deputy Director Patton, as well as Emergency Manager Director Rick Fontana. Thank you, men.
Thank you. All right. Local 884 represents approximately 35 operator dispatchers who are answering public distress calls at the city's 911 operation. Approximately 40% of them are New Haven residents. We have 35 operators now. The budget I counted had 45. I might be off on my numbers, but there's a gap of, you know, how many the budget allows for and what we currently have on staff. The training process is long and often takes 3 to 5 years to become truly proficient in the procedures, the unique dispatch language, familiarity with the city and its patterns of peak activity. The ranks of the operator dispatchers have been depleted by promotions to communication supervisors or changes in career choice. In a single room, 911 call taking, fire dispatch, and police dispatch operations occur 24/7, 365 days a year. 3 shifts of operators rotate through shared workstations. On a basic level, core employee needs are not met. We have continual complaints over chairs. The need for a sufficient, comfortable, ergonomic, and functioning chairs are essential, as operators are required to sit 8 to 16 hours a day. New chairs were only recently received. Operators are mandated to stay a second shift, a signal 111, when their replacement does not arrive, or more than likely when there is insufficient skilled staff to fill all shift openings. A small number of fully skilled operators are taking on a disproportional burden of the mandated overtime openings. Oftentimes, this requirement to stay comes at the last minute, and employees have little time to make home care arrangements and the like, causing added stress. Mandatory holdovers are an essential requirement of the position, made very difficult by the number of single-parent households and the lack of equality, equally skilled among the group. Employees have lost the spirit of congeniality among the team. There is bitter resentment. Management has not adequately addressed the toxicity and bullying within the department in a timely manner. Investigation and response to complaint of the workplace violence are up to 2 years outstanding. The position of operator dispatcher is a difficult and complex responsibility. It requires every member of the team to be on their A game every time they answer a call. They must be able to respond professionally in times of true crisis and during those times of non-crisis when the calls to report a barking dog. The added stress in the room distracts employees from focusing on the job at hand and the attention they are able to give the public. We ask the Public Safety Committee to work with city managers to address the toxic work environment concerns. Administrators and supervisors must be present and work side by side with operators. Managers must be actively mediate issues of dispute. They must also address and correct poor behavior in a fair, consistent, and timely manner. We also suggest the city develop an emergency childcare program for first responders. This will allow operators and other emergency service employees options to handle childcare issues when they're held beyond their regular shift. The operator dispatchers work throughout the COVID shutdown. Their hours altered to 12-hour shifts in order to provide for more social distancing. Operators demonstrated their commitment to the city and to the public during the time of unprecedented need. The city needs to reciprocate with better treatment and support of their operator dispatcher workforce. Thank you. That's the end of my prepared remarks.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Pete. And give us a response to that, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. George Pete, 360 State Street here in New Haven. I'm the director of the department. I start out by saying many of the things that Lori covered, I totally agree with. Lori and I have been communicating, and I believe strongly, again, there's so much more that we agree with than we disagree with. And I believe we both have the best interest of the department at heart. And I think we have a bright future ahead of us, just given the time. COVID has slowed us down as Ms. Simpson had indicated, it slowed down the disciplinary action. It slowed down many of the things that we do with personnel in the department due to just not being able to get resources and answers many times from City Hall because of COVID. People were working remotely, so on and so forth. And also, I'll say that absolutely the best, the deputy has the best interests of our operators at heart, because happy operators and dispatchers are much more proficient workers than a disgruntled workforce. We have had our problems with disgruntled people. Some of those have been dealt with as of very recently, and we still have some others to take care of. And again, I think we are on the path to doing so. Just, I think we need some more time, and we'll see some better and some great results. And I'll leave it to the deputy if he'd like to add anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, me? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
I was going to let Jeff speak on anything he would like to.
Oh, okay. I would say that, again, one of the things that the union approached me with, 884, and I think it's a good resolution. There's 2 employees who have had many complaints with HR long before my time that have gone back and forth. And we're looking at a mediation with AAA, and Director Pete is willing to use the money that he can use for that, which makes sense, to get these 2 employees to agree to how they're going to work together professionally going forward, which I think would be a positive thing. I'm unaware of workplace violence complaints languishing for 2 years, and I'll ask the union not to do it here, but if they want to provide that information so I could relay it, so we can look at that, and that's something that I will talk to the director of HR about. A lot of the things, again, and I hate to sound like, I'm not being the same old thing, but again, a lot of these things, and again, I don't agree that we haven't been trying to get to the table. I have emails back and forth with the union trying to get to the table, and we have, and a lot of it sometimes was the union's attorney was not available on the days we wanted to be available, and it just goes like that. And so we did eventually get something from A, and I can show you the amounts of email and conversation that I've had with the 884, and before that, before I got online about these issues. So they're not new. And I know Director Pete cares very much about resolving them. And it's not about that. Well, a couple things it takes: money. We got to get the budget together. We have to look at, again, schedules, training, job duties. There's been a long history, and I'm not going to deny that's over a decade, I think. And I guess that, Lori, you can attest to that, about a lot of stuff there that has been going on. And there is a frustration, and we do share it. And I think that the nice thing about it, all of us have agreed that we want to make it better. And I've had long conversations too with the union and with Director Pete about, ways to resolve that. And, Lori's been really great about, and so was Maria Sterling, particularly when I first got on, about suggestions and openness and coming forward about safety protocols and things. So I do think we're getting there. And it is the problems that New Haven faces with retention recruitment are not unique. They are pretty much, it's not unique, and we need to look at that. So what are the subcommittees? We're hoping to get, someone on HR and open ideas. And again, it's a group thing. There's supervisors as well, 3144, who also, have to deal with schedules and the job descriptions and dealing with attendance and all those things and getting people coverage. So I'm reiterating the same thing. So I'll stop.
So the chair is muted. He's muted.
I was trying to avoid any feedback. Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Brooks, comment, please.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Before the labor system begin to talk, Pete asked if Jeffrey wanted to say anything along the lines, and
that's right.
She jumped in. So
I'm sorry. I thought he said Kathleen.
no, it's okay.
I did.
No, it's okay.
I
It's okay. I just
God,
no,
who wanted to hear me again? I'm sorry.
no.
After George paused, I thought that was the end of it, so I called on Kathleen. Sorry.
Either one. Thank you very much, Alderman Gray.
Good evening, everyone. Jeffrey Patton, 45 Hemlock Road, Meriden, Connecticut. I am the Deputy Director of Public Safety Communications. I would just like to say I confirm with Ms. Lichtenberg's estimate of 35 union members in our department under operator dispatcher. There are 2 probationary ones that are not yet under the umbrella of 884 at this time. And our department is budgeted for 44, which leaves us a deficit of 7. And in a department as demanding as ours, 7 empty seats is felt very, very hard. We have had conversations, Lori and myself, regarding our training process. We, George, Pete, myself, and Lori have been involved in negotiations and conversations trying to come up with plans to shorten the length of time and increase the intensity of our training to try and put people under a little bit of pressure that they might be expecting to face when they're actually doing the job while they're actually in the training environment. And we can hopefully find that they are able to come through and do the job under fire, or identify early on that they may not have chosen a career that they would prosper in, and maybe give them opportunities to look elsewhere for other types of things. But these are things that we have scheduled for negotiations when we get into contract negotiations, because they're not currently in the contract. And again, if we remove people from answering phones to try and train them to do other jobs, those 7 vacancies are then exacerbated by 2 more people being removed. So now there's 9 empty seats, and it snowballs very, very quickly. And you add in contractual time off, you add in occasional sick time, you throw in a worldwide pandemic, and we've seen the result. This past year has been very, very difficult on our department. I know George has done everything possible to try to meet our requirements under the state law and serve the community to the best of this department's ability, the way they are entitled to and should be served. And I have nothing but the utmost respect and appreciation for my employees who have gone above and beyond on numerous occasions. They've worked very long shifts. They've worked multiple doubles, and they always come through in the end. It's just an unfortunate circumstance that we are in, and I believe everyone here is really working very diligently at trying to resolve these issues and make it so it is a better working environment, because as George said, people that are at least comfortable in their work environment are going to be more productive. People that don't dread their coworker booking off at the last minute and leaving them in the loop, and it causes morale issues, and that ultimately degrades the work product of everyone else around them. I think we can come together and make a good plan for solution and put it in play, and I think we would see benefits from it almost immediately. I think we can really get a hold of this and turn it around, and I look forward to the opportunity to work with both 884 and 3144 and try and improve the environment for all the employees in the department.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so we move on to Mr. Brooks now.
Thank you, Alder Chairman, Alder Antunes. I don't need to state my address for the record again,
No,
right?
there you go.
Okay. So again, 3144 did echo some of the issues that Lori raised, although in our conversations, we talked more specifically about sometimes the bullying that goes on in the department. And so I'm glad to hear that you all are talking. But I think the last conversation I had with George was that he had to go through labor relations. And so if you all have resumed conversations, then 314 is open to that as well, Mr. Pete. You can have a conversation with the supervisors union as well. I just want to point out a number of our supervisors have complained about the lack of support in terms of making a decision. And one of the hardest things I think is managing people, right? People are like cats to hurl them into doing what you want them to do. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but people are just people, and people have their own way of doing things. They have their own ideology, they have their own concepts. And so sometimes managing people, supervising people can be difficult. So I have offered many times, as George can attest, I've been in his office many times and say, let's do mediation. And so I've offered that. So I'm glad to hear that now it's on the table and you all are going to pick that up and do that. But I do think that one of the major complaints about the supervisors have, outside of some of the stuff that Lori talked about, is that when they do issue discipline, that they have to be supported, right? And they should be backed up, and it should be followed through. A lot of the things that go on in the room that is tolerated in the room is because there is no action from the supervisor. And I would agree that there are two sides to every story. But as I said to George, and this is going back some while, when he first became the department head, I was over there quite frequently, and George and I talked very well, had no problems. I think as of recently, they were instructed that everything should go through labor, and so we have not had a rapport. But if that is changing, I'm glad to hear that. I'm open to that. And I will mention this and then I'll stop. I understand 884 is in management meetings with you, Kathleen. And so we have asked that back in January 2020. In fact, some of the charges that we filed. And so if that's on the table, I would love to have our monthly management meetings as we had put that request in. With that being said, I will stop at this point.
Thank you. Thank the three of you. And I'm going to move on to questions from my colleagues. But first, let me ask you this. For both operations, security and communication, it would seem to me structurally there's a lack, there's a gap in there, that there's no middle management. I mean, you go from line staff, but as dispatcher or officer, to supervisor, and then the next step is deputy director or director. Shouldn't there be, like, the police would have a lieutenant in there. A company may have a general foreman over the foreman who's the supervisor. It's just something to think about if you need another more logical, like a shift commander type of category. And both of those operations may be important. Just a thought right now. I'll start off with, you know what? And Director Fontana just came back. Did you want to offer a comment there, Rick?
No, thank you. I think George and Jeff both summed it up nicely. Again, this is a very difficult situation working through COVID for the past year. They're just under a lot of duress at the 911 center. Again, close contact, close quarters. Really, there's, if you can find the perfect dispatch center, let me know, because I really want to go take a look at it. But again, there are challenges, but there are challenges in any of the dispatch centers, whether they be local, regional, or statewide ones. And I know that everyone is working as hard as they can, as diligently as they can, to ensure that the 911 calls are answered in the best possible, most efficient manner, and that the residents are safe. There are challenges. I know that George, and I know that Jeff, and I know that that Laura and also Harold are working through those. Again, no perfect situation, but I do understand some of the management issues that come about. Look, no perfect scenario, but I know that everyone's working for the for the greater community and making sure that New Haven's safe. And that's all I have to say. And I appreciate everybody really sitting down, going through what the issues are, and trying to get resolution as much as possible. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Rick. And I know it's difficult, both jobs. I've worked in both areas in my years in law enforcement. And I think especially communications is very difficult, in which you have to deal with over the phones and trying to make quick decisions to help people. I will move on to my vice chair with any questions. Alder Wingate.
No, I don't have any questions to the group here. There's something called interest-based problem solving. I think perhaps I'm going to say it again. Interest-based problem solving is a best practice tactic between unions and labor management that y'all may want to look into. I had a conversation with George last week or week before to try to get together with him and try to get some time to go over some stuff. I would love to sit down at some point, not to resolve any problems, Simmons, but to just give a tool, perhaps that it'll work, right? I think it will work. I know that it works. To try to get to some resolutions in the interest of all parties, both parties. So that's all I have to offer.
Thank you. Thank you, Alder Wingate. Great having your input with your background there. It helps an awful lot.
Thank you.
Moving over to Alder Crespo. Questions or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have several questions and several comments going back to the earlier conversation about the 4 vacancies having to do with once folks are, once they retire. I believe there was 4 vacancies, if I'm not mistaken. So my question would be, what is the time frame behind, recruiting folks and hiring them? And I know it could be, it's a lengthy process. I do expect that it can take a month, 2, 3, 6, what have you. But is there a plan of action, number one? And then I also wanted to address the workplace violence policy that we do have on file. I mean, the only one that I'm aware of is the one that was effective 2009, which is the workplace policy that has to do with, and I quote, "The purpose of the statement is to notify employees that the city of New Haven has a policy of zero tolerance for acts of violence in the workplace by or among its employees. These policy is inclusive of acts and or threats of violence, including intimidation by and the employee, by and to the employee's property or premises of the city." So I am aware of this policy. I don't know if it has been updated since 2009, but it has to do with physical assault, threat to assault, stalking, possessing or threatening with a lethal weapon, vandalism, arson, racial epithets, derogatory remarks, bizarre offensive comments, harassing phone calls, voicemails, what have you. So given that that's a violence policy or workplace violence policy that's implemented, now putting my hat on as an advocate, as a senior advocate, I do understand that it takes time for an investigation. If I have a particular client or a patient that reaches out to me with a complaint, it may take, a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 2 months. And then if it needs to be escalated to a grievance, then we have to proceed with that policy or with that process. So I do understand that it can be a lengthy process to try to investigate the matter and find out who's at fault, because there is actually 3 sides. There is one side, the person who is being accused or alleged of those things that they're committing, the side of the person who's making the accusations, and then there's the truth. So once you're able to ascertain and determine what the both sides are and then investigate them thoroughly, you can then make a resolution or make a determination as to what would be an effective resolution. If it's disciplinary action, corrective action, what have you. So on that note, I would think it would be wise maybe for the person who is, instead of having to send everyone home and say, because everyone or there's many allegations of multiple parties. So instead of sending multiple people home, maybe sending the person who is being investigated home, either, I don't know, administrative leave, pending investigation, with or without pay. That is up to the Department of Human Resources, to the director. But I just wanted to also bring that up. I wanted to bring that up as, once we're able to deal with that, but in the meantime, what are we doing about recruiting those 4 vacancies? And then going over to the second conversation, what are we doing to recruit those 7 vacancies? Because I do understand 1 person out, 2 person out would be an extensive, weight to carry. But when you have more like 7 people, I do understand the severity that folks get burnt out, having to stay second shifts and having to arrange for, I don't know, childcare. And so what are we doing with that? So first question for the 4 vacancies for supervisory, and then the second question is about the 7 vacancies. I'm not sure if they're one and the same, and the policy for the workplace violence.
I'll just start. Our supervisors, we only have 1 vacancy. I think the 4 vacancy, maybe I can be corrected if I'm wrong, is school security. We only have 1 vacancy in our supervisor ranks. Our 7 vacancies, we have 4 individuals who are in the process of being hired. That brings the 7 down to 3. And we'll be in the process of having interviews over the next coming weeks for those other 3, because we still do have an active list. One of the things that's jamming us up for an extended amount of time right now, for some reason, is background checks. Getting background checks from the state of Connecticut and through the PD is taking an awful long time. So that's where we stand with that. If the deputy would like to add anything, I'll have him add on to that. And I think it's best that Kathleen talk again about the policy for zero workplace violence. We have recently dealt with some, and again, she can discuss how we've handled workplace violence issues just recently.
Thank you. I appreciate the information, and yes, I do agree with you that doing these investigations can be multi-layered. One of the things that we oftentimes when you get an investigation complaint come in, you don't know whether it's really a threat or if it's something that's something less. And I want to say that some of these investigations have other charges. We have charges of theft of time, of job abandonment, also built in with these. So it's a lot of different things. I'm not saying PSAP, but also with the Board of Ed issues. And I don't know, I'm not saying that they're true, but they're allegations, right? So you have to go through them, and you're right. Administratively is one thing that we can use, but also looking at it, you're right, to cover. And I think the problem is that you have is that people need to be at the workplace, and they can't work remotely. Like remotely's been great for clerical jobs, for instance, if you have issues and I'm not even saying that people don't get along. Now you can send them home remotely. I don't mean that as right, but I mean facetiously, but it's been huge in that way. But a lot of these jobs you can't work remotely. So it is tricky. And some of these things, because of, again, in my time frame, just so you know, we're trying to accelerate these, particularly now that we have an independent investigator as a consultant. So we're pretty confident we can get these things done now within 30 days. And so we can stop. And we've gotten a lot of these things moved along. They're getting along. They're getting done. But no one wants to have as many people with complaints and with the problems. So what I would say, with the workplace violence policy, I do think it needs to be looked at. I haven't had a chance to work with HR. We have a corporation counsel, a labor very seasoned, experienced, Michelle Dupree. And one of the things that we want to do now that we're getting a little relief from COVID is to go over policies and make sure they're up to date and that they make sense. And one of them is on our target is the workplace violence policy and other policies. So, and again, we, input from the union and input from that we just received now is helpful. So thank you. And I'm not sure if, I think the 4 vacancies with the Board of Ed, I will only say this, that I will follow up on that because I don't do that recruitment piece. That's civil service testing. And Steve O'Brandy for the HR, and it's my bad. I probably should have thought of bringing him on the call. And so for that, I apologize because we're different roles. So, but I think that your question's good. And I also think we've gotten input about, layers of supervision and do we have adequate supervision? And I think there's something with COVID we learned because people go out now more, because what happens if you have so many people out at once and they're in, like, for me, if I go out, who's going to do my job? That's it. Right. So you have to kind of think of that when you're planning. A lot of these things too, like childcare and these ideas are great, but again, it costs money. So we have to, look at these things with the budget things and hopefully, there's creative solutions and other ways we can get things done. So I feel like I hope did I cover everything?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
sorry.
appreciate it, Attorney Simpson.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you, George, as well for the insight. And through the chair, of course, I just wanted to also add a comment with regards to Chair Antunes when he indicated that maybe there's a position that can be thought of so we have a supervisor or multiple supervisors looking at or supervising the front staff. But then what about the supervisor that supervises supervisors? And then from there, increase it to the next level, deputy director, director. Because so for my professional experience, if there is a frontline individual, they can escalate it to their manager, and if the manager can't deal with it, they'll escalate it to me as a senior person, and then from me, I will escalate it to my director, and ultimately to my director's boss. So there is a chain of command, and then from there, it goes up to the president. So definitely, maybe some idea of in the next budget season to consider a position for, I don't know, a supervisor or a manager or, given that you guys use uniform, you probably have chain of command such as sergeants, lieutenants, captains, majors, what have you. In order to address those positions, those supervisory roles, I think that's certainly a good idea. And then, of course, I have to agree with Attorney Simpson with regards to, that policy of administrative leave, because, in the pandemic, realistically speaking, a lot of folks have been sent either furloughed or laid off, and then they've been able to get their jobs back, and now they're either working remotely, either 80% of the day or 80% of the week, and then it goes down to 60% of the week. I do see policies where there's different organizations, and by the way, I work in healthcare, so this is how I do have understanding of having folks work from home, having providers, having clinicians, having different folks working from home, working remotely. But those individuals that need to be in the front line that actually have to do their physical job at the workplace, we need them. We need those essential workers. And of course, we don't want to send a mass number of folks home. And I don't want to be insensitive to those individuals making the allegations and putting their complaints and making those pressing charges or whatever they're doing to be heard about the folks that are either oppressing them or putting them in an uncomfortable position. But I think that staying in the workplace would be the best bet, because we certainly need those individuals. If folks have PTO or vacation time, maybe they can take a rotation, maybe send one for the week, then the following week another, then the following week another. Because if we send a lot of people home, how are we gonna, it's gonna interrupt the operations, the day-to-day operations. So maybe we want to think about sending one person at a time per week, and then giving them an opportunity, or a couple of days, and giving them an opportunity to take a mental health day or a couple of days just to clear their mind, come back to work, because we need folks to work. And I certainly don't want to be insensitive, but I think that we should keep them working, and if we can make any accommodations to make them feel better, I think the best would be communication.
Alder
You know,
Crespo,
yes.
Alder Crespo, we want to save our suggestions for the end. Remember, we still have the comments from the public, and we have to vote on these 3 items, what we're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield my time to you.
Thank you. And I'll ask the remainder of my colleagues to limit yourself to 1 question. It's getting late. We're going an awful long time on this. So we need to move on. The public, we shouldn't be dragging them out too long, too late to listen to this item. I'd also like to recognize our Alder from Ward 10, Anna Festa, who's also joined us. Next up is Alder Roth. 1 question or comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question. I'll save my comment for when we have deliberation of this. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Alder Haywood, 1 question or 1 comment?
Hello?
There you are. Do you have a question?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, thank you. Alder Singh, 1 question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No question or comment at this time.
And Alder Smith.
No, Mr. Chair, no question, no comment.
Thank you. I think we've heard an awful lot. And we'll move on to the public. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this matter? And I'm going to try and look for hands up here. If you'll help me, Mr. Vice Chair. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this issue? And for the 3rd time, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this issue? Seeing none.
I make a motion, we close the public portion at this time.
Moved. Is there a second? Moved and second. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. The public portion is closed. Mr. Vice Chair, want to move on to the first item?
I would like to make a motion to move on the first item.
Second.
Moved and second. Discussion.
I think it's a no-brainer in reference to what is going on. And once again, I'm sorry for her loss. But it is a great partnership that she is supporting us with. And Jacobs looked like Chief Jacobs looked like he's all in it. So I support it.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of supporting item number 1, the resolution to accept the monies from Demand Zero, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye. I think, Madam Chair, I think we got to do the roll call type thing.
Madam Chair?
Oh, excuse me. It's getting late. Chair. My apologies. Chair, I think we have to
Okay.
do the roll thing.
Vice Chair, call for a roll call. All right, Vice Chair, you're first.
Yes.
Alder Crespo.
Aye.
Alder Roth.
Yes.
Alder Haywood.
Yes.
Alder Singh.
Yes.
Alder Smith.
Yes.
And it's a yes for me. It's unanimous vote. So carried.
I make a motion, we move the second item on
Second.
tonight's agenda.
Moved in second. Discussion.
I think this is another
Second.
one.
Oh, did we second? Sorry.
Mhm.
Yes, it was. I'm sorry, but you probably didn't hear it. So Alder Singh second.
You go, Alder Roth, you go. Alder Roth.
Supporting
th-
discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. No, I think this makes complete sense. It's something, the current trailer is completely not usable. This is something that needs a lot of use. Fire education is so important, and we're getting it for less than 5%. So I think it makes complete sense to move forward.
Any additional discussion from committee members? Seeing none. Oh, there we go. Alder Crespo. Yes.
Let's get it. That's it.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor? Well, we'll do the roll call again, Mr. Vice Chair, and you're first.
Yes.
Alder Crespo.
Aye.
Alder Roth.
Yes.
Alder Haywood.
Yes.
Alder Singh.
Yes.
Alder Smith. And it's a yes for me as well. Unanimous vote. So carried.
Chair, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Chair, I would like to move the third item.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion.
Ooh.
Yes. All right. Remember that this is an item that we don't have legislative authority on, but we can ask for some commitments by the parties involved, if that's your desire. It certainly is mine. I think we had some sort of commitment. Let me see. Are they still on? They left the main screen here. Yes, I see.
Yeah, they
Mr.
left.
Brooks is still on. No, Brooks is still there. Pete's still there. Patton's still there.
Okay.
And everyone else left. Oh, Kathleen Simpson's still there. Good, because I saw that Miss Simpson said that she would look into the issue on supervision. She'd get info to the unions on grievances, the number of grievances, what's pending, etc. And she would also look into long-term complaints that the communications had that supposedly were sitting around that haven't been addressed. She was unaware of those. So I think we have, and we can hold Ms. Simpson. I think you're still there. Hold your feet to the fire on those three to get them answers to the proper people and give us some feedback on those. Other discussion?
Chair, could we honestly put together some kind of letter to send to them on some of, what we heard tonight, some of the follow-up with, like some resolutions? I mean, I don't want to overstep my boundaries in reference to things, but I think something needs to be put on paper to follow up with this group.
Yes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like to follow up where things are at, just like, the no nonsense policy. I would like to see it. I would like to retrieve that. Right.
You mean the no violence?
No violence.
Yeah, the no violence. I'm sorry, my apologies. It's getting late. But it is nonsense. Okay,
Yes,
let's talk about what it is. All right.
It's hurtful, but it's nonsense.
Right. The no
violence.
No violence.
Workplace violence.
No workplace violence. Help me out, Alder Smith. I think we should put a letter together, asking some of these questions, trying to get some of these answers on, what's happening in that department. Let's get a dialogue on. Let's get a paper trail on it. That's me.
Alder Smith, you were next.
Mr. Chair, I'm sort of concerned in this situation, but I'm also wondering, what is the Board of Education doing in regards to this? Because isn't the school security under the office of the Board of Education?
Yes, they are. And like I say, I tried to contact some of them and got no response. And they were sent the information on this public hearing tonight. They elected not to come, I guess.
So my other question will it be feasible of sending them a letter to find out what are they gonna do in regards to this situation? Because it's a serious matter
Yes, it
that
is.
is at hand, and they need to address this.
And I think I saw Sean Madison and Rebecca Bombero still online. Could we bring them into our discussion? Does anyone have concern, complaint about that? Because I think through them, we should be able to get the Board of Education maybe to even let us know why you elected not to show up. You know, this is, like you said, it's a serious matter, and not one person from Board of Ed was here to comment.
I think that would be great.
Wait a minute, let me get a response from either Becky or Sean.
Sean Madison, 1279 Quinnipiac Avenue in the mighty 12th ward. I can't answer the question about the Board of Ed. I don't know. I didn't talk to the Board of Ed this evening. So
Is it something that you'd be able to press them on, either the superintendent or even a board member? I mean, I haven't been able to. I've tried to reach Thad Reddish a number of times, and I get no response. I don't know if he's still at work, on vacation, or what the case may be.
yeah, I can follow up with the Board of Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll follow up with the Board of Ed.
Thank you. First, we'll go to Crespo and then to Wingate.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I wanted to ask, piggybacking on Alder Smith's idea, instead of just getting a letter, can we have another public meeting where they have to come and talk to us? I think, reaching out to superintendent as well as Board of Ed President Jasenia and other members to come to this discussion, because it's very serious. I understand that maybe things came up, maybe they couldn't attend, but we certainly would like to ascertain the root of all this and find a resolution. These are serious concerns. And I think we have to do our due diligence to not only have a response, but also have them here in front of us, talking to us, where there's no, give me 20 days, give me 30 days to respond. There's a meeting, it's next month, have your response available to be able to articulate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I agree with you. I'm not sure. We have to check on. I know generally in city departments, we can require department heads to show, but things get a little questionable when it comes to Board of Ed. But we do have subpoena power, so we can subpoena if we have to.
Mr. Chair, would it be in the best interest then, because given that we are a municipality and they probably have to respond to the state, to maybe have the state delegation have some type of forum to also have a public hearing or some type of public safety committee that they have to respond to the state?
I don't know. I mean, generally it's a local issue. I would rather keep it local and not go to the state with it. I don't think it's necessary. I got a couple other hands up, so let me get some more comment questions in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Wingate. And then
Thank you,
Alder Rowe.
Chair. Sean knows this. As the governing body over the city, right? That budget comes from us, right? They have to come and see us, right?
With some of it.
No, truly we are. And they have to respond. And that's it. They have to respond.
Yeah, again, Alders, I didn't talk to them tonight, so I don't know who was, and if Thad can't come because he's the subject of a complaint, but someone else can. And
Absolutely.
I'll talk to them.
Absolutely. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah.
I like the way you think.
I appreciate it.
All right, Alder Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I actually disagree with having an additional hearing. I very much appreciate the seriousness of the concerns raised, but from everything Attorney Simpson said, I do not think this is the forum to be discussing them. I feel like I have very few bits of information. We're not going to be able to delve in. It is being dealt with in a separate process. And so I just don't think we're the right forum, and adding the Board of Ed and doing it again, I just disagree with that. And I think we should, yes, I appreciate that making sure the process is continuing is really important, but not in this forum, in my view. Thank you.
Well, remember what I said earlier, that it's not the labor issue that we're dealing with, it's the process. And
But
my concern is if they are following the right steps when they get a complaint of this type.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that, but I do feel like much of the conversation today was actually, which I can appreciate, but it was about the underlying issues, in my view. So I just wanted to share my view.
Right. Well, and that's why in the beginning, I let everyone know that we're not dealing with labor management type of issues. We're dealing with process and whether the city side is doing what they should be doing. And I was hoping everybody would understand and follow that. Alder Smith, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. I just, feel that we do need to bring them back because this is a really serious matter. As you said, we're dealing with policies. One of the policies in which that we're dealing with is zero tolerance of workplace violence. Those procedures have not been taken up the proper way. And I think if we bring them back, it alleviates us as a city from being sued in regards to the violence that has been taken on. So I really think we do really need to address these issues and make sure that maybe we might need to revamp the policy or make some changes in the policy, but we need to find out exactly what are they actually doing. Are they following proper procedures and protocols in regards to getting to these steps? So I think it is very important that we do that. Thank you.
Right. It's like I say, as long as we're not discussing any of their open investigations or labor agreement standards, the biggest thing we're concerned about is process. And that process is what's going to help protect our citizens or our employees. Some of them aren't citizens of New Haven. Alder Crespo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for point of clarity, I think for my understanding, I would like to know if there is an updated policy, as I was only able to find the one from 2009. And to Alder Smith's suggestion, maybe it needs to be revisited. Working in legal for over 10 years, I understand that it's either annually or biannually where policies have to be reviewed, revised, and updated accordingly. It's been 11, 12 years that policy, that one that I looked at for the city of New Haven. I'm not certain if there is an updated one, but it is from the authority of the CEO. I believe the CEO is responsible for such policies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we will ask then the CAO to forward a copy to Mr. Lucas so he can disseminate it amongst not only his committee, but the whole board should be aware of any updates in that type of policy. We are quasi employees of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so the thought is still on the floor about another meeting, workshop, or public hearing with the Board of Education. What are thoughts? I mean, we're in discussion part now, so we need to come up with what we want to do on this item. It's the last one tonight.
Yeah, Chair. And
Alder Wingate, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think we run two streams here. I think we make a request, right, for the policy, right, so we can take a look at it. I think we can have another public meeting with the restraints of understanding what we can ask, what we cannot ask. Just like you said at the very, very beginning. and we try to get Reddish, Board of Ed. We do. I think we should have them here. I think we really should have a public hearing so we can sit down and understand what's going on, why this is such a disconnect. Since I've been on the board, this been going on for a while. So if we could try to get to some resolution, I think it'd be great to pull them back with an understanding what we can and cannot do. Alder Roth is right. We can't negotiate or not negotiate. She's right. She's right about that. But I think what we're trying to do is say someone is watching, someone is paying attention to the situation, right? And I think we should be asking for information. And I would put a motion on the floor if I have to. I don't think I have to, but I will put a motion on the floor if I have to just say we're going to have another public hearing. I don't know if I have to make a motion. It have to be accepted and voted on. I don't know.
Well, yes, it would have to make it as a motion. But I would ask, here's my thought now, and I will get to you, Alder Smith and Alder Crespo. I see your hands. If maybe you and I, Sean, could set up a meeting with Corporation Counsel and see just what our standing is and where we could go as far as discussion about the matter overall, and then look at bringing it to a public hearing. We can vote to have a public hearing. We could always cancel it if we have to. We can do that tonight, but I think it would be helpful for us to be more knowledgeable, and that means sitting down maybe with the Corp Council and seeing, where our authority lies and what we can and can't ask at a public hearing with them. Sean, what do you think? You'll have to unmute.
Sorry. Sure, be happy to set up a meeting and a conversation on that.
Okay, Alder Smith, you were next, then Alder Crespo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just thinking this can be a start, not just for the Board of Ed security, but for the greater part of city employees of knowing what is actually the protocols so that we don't have to go through this again, because I think I've heard something about Steve LeBrandy where it gets to and it stops or doesn't follow through. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe we need to find out what happens when it gets to him before it gets to labor relation to see where the ball was dropped.
Okay, that makes sense. Alder Crespo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Considering, Alder Roth's comment, I think we certainly want to do exactly just that, Mr. Chair. Try to see if we can have Corp Counsel guide us as to having an educated conversation where we're permitted to ask certain questions and not having to, dive into labor relations or any of conversation that has to do with personal matters and stuff of that nature. But certainly the words that Alder and Ms. Vice Chair stated, Wingate, I think the message here is, we're watching. There's eyes that are watching. And I know that a comment was made about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago about a particular someone having undermining either the labor relations or whatnot. But I believe that a message overall would be, hey, why couldn't you attend? Especially if you were advised by the chair of this committee to attend. It responds that, hey, we will not be undermined because we certainly take the matters at hand very seriously. And I think that with that in mind, and with your suggestion about having a conversation with Vice Chair and Corporate Counsel, certainly having an opportunity to schedule and maybe canceling in the future will be the best bet. So I would agree. I don't think there needs to be a motion, but if it needs to be moved and seconded, I'm all in favor. But I would ask have to go after this particular motion, given that we're still in discussion. Just a point of clarity.
Right, we're in discussion, so that means we could also modify or amend the motion that's on the floor. Alder Singh had his
Got it.
hand up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know, listening to testimony 844 present and 3144 has been presented, and labor relation has been listened to that. And my understanding from this labor relation, they have hired an outside investigator to investigate these complaints or matter of concern, and then they would collaborate back. So at this time, they're waiting in the investigation to go through on these matters. So in my opinion, humbly to my colleagues here, that the process has been started. And so if to get a feedback is to get labor relation back where they are with this. That's my take on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You killed 3 people.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So we have a motion on the floor. Would you repeat your motion, Alder Wingate?
Come here, doctor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. No. I would like to make a motion that we have another public hearing with the Board of Education, Reddish. Also,
Just a point of clarity, Mr. Chair. Is this an amendment to the current motion that's on the table?
there is no motion on the table.
Well, the motion was to move the item. So that's why now we'd have to amend it to a full motion. We voted to move the item. We seconded it and we had discussion on it. And that's where we got hung up.
Gotcha.
I see you're confused. Alder Singh, do you have some clarification?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Again, going back, this testimony we hear is on the investigation. And if we get back Mr. Relish with us, he may not comment because this matter is on the investigation. So I don't, it's a good idea, all respect to my colleague, but if he comes back and said this matter is on the investigation, I cannot comment. We are right where we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, but Alder Wingate had the floor for a motion. So we have to hear his motion first before we're going to comment or make any changes.
My apologies.
Alder Wingate.
I would like to make a motion that we have a public hearing for the Board of Education. Also having Reddish come if he can. And request the policy and procedure that they have of any sort.
Second.
And the motion is moved in second. Discussion on that motion. Alder Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine with that, asking for the policy, but I agree with my colleague from the 5th Ward that I don't think having the hearing while I'd let the process play out and not have the hearing.
Any other discussion, Alder Wingate?
I mean, in the spirit of time, I think we should vote on the item.
Okay, Alder Wingate has to move the item. We will do a roll call vote on that motion. Alder Wingate.
Yes.
Alder Crespo.
Aye.
Alder Roth.
No.
Alder Haywood. Alder Singh.
No.
Alder Smith. And it's a yes from me. So the yes have it. We will schedule another public hearing with clarification of if Reddish can testify. That's right. I didn't get it mixed up today because I didn't write it down.
if Reddish could come or not.
Right, based on the fact that he's part of investigation.
Board of Ed and the policy and procedures.
Okay,
The attendance of the I'm sorry, pardon me, Mr. Chair.
right. I think we've got it. And we can always play it back anyway for clarification. It's voted and approved. So we will move forward. Sorry for the 2 negative votes, but that's part of the democratic process.
Mr. Chair.
Alder Crespo.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion for moving and adjourning is on the floor. And since there, by Robert's Rules of Order, there is no debate on motion to adjourn. All those in favor, we will take a voice vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. No personal privileges tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.